There it is. I was ready for it this time. Folks, this is Q&A. Dr. James and Dr. Mike. Mike, how's it going?
Good, good. How are you?
I had one of those day-ruining moments today, and I think you'll relate to this. I was taking a shower, and I had that, I need to poo moment where I was like, I'm in the shower, and I have two choices, right? The first choice is get out of the shower. You're soaking wet. You're just going to make a huge mess. Take that poo, and God forbid it's not like a nice clean poo, and you actually have to really get in there, and then your butt cheeks are all wet and the toilet paper is dissolving. It's just a disaster. Option two is just be a fucking savage and just shit in the shower and hope for the best.
All the pipes go the same way anyway.
Exactly. And I did that on our wedding weekend in Tahoe. It was more of a shart. I didn't intend to do it, but debris went past my feet either way. So I did it. I had that moment, and I did the first option. I got out and just made a mess, and just then my day is ruined at that point. There's no recovering from mid shower poop.
There are worse poops, James. There's like mid pants poop where you poop your pants. The shower poop is kind of a self-solving problem because you're in a shower already. You can get all squeaky clean.
Yeah, just bend over and spread them and just let it.
It's like a black box process. You walk into the shower dirty, you come out clean. It doesn't really matter what happened while you're in there. You come out the same way.
Yeah, I made a mistake. I had some of that Kashi cereal, and then Mel has been making the low carb tortilla quesadillas, and I think it was just like I hit my fiber MRV for the day, and then it manifested today when I was in the shower, just like, oh no. So
how to get the big Kraken monster to come out, Aquaman has the fucking magic trident, and he activates it.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure you could also get the Kraken to come out if you just throw a box of Kashi Goleen into that motherfucker cage.
No.
5 minutes later, it's like there we go.
Look, he inked, and you're like, that's not ink.
Oh God.
So anyways, sports Q&A questions.
Sports questions. All right, here we go. You ready?
Yeah, where the shit am I? There we go. Okay.
All right. First man up is a gentleman that goes by only 2 letters. L_W.
That's kind of like GW. Maybe he was a president.
That's right. All right. He says, hello, docs. How important is phasic structure of massing, maintaining, and cutting for an intermediate lifter? What is your recommended approach to the principle of phase potentiation on a block-to-block scale for a lifter at this level of advancement that is interested in maximizing results in terms of hypertrophy? I understand that phase potentiation is one of the least important principles for hypertrophy, and that as an intermediate lifter, probably be able to make excellent gains without it directly implementing the plan. However, I'm a person obsessed with doing everything possible to achieve my body composition goals. You just answered your own question, LW. If you're obsessed, you got to do phase potentiation. But continuing on, I assume most people that watch these are. Therefore, well, I don't know, maybe some definitely. A lot of people comment and this is too complicated. Just shut up and lift. I don't think those people are obsessed with anything.
And a lot of people are just more willing to make trade-offs. They I'm not trying to be the best, and I have a family or whatever. So
right,
I want to be the best I can.
And an addiction to alcohol.
Yeah.
Just talking about.
Can't judge that one.
I actually have neither one of those. That's kind of sad. Therefore, I wonder if it would be better to be conservative using maintenance phases, resensitization, active rest, and mini cuts in order to get longer, undisrupted massing phases with good momentum, or use it more often like an advanced athlete would. So I'm just going to start answering this here and there. And James, if you need to tag in, okay. And then of course you get the last word anyway. You only use resensitization phases and mini cuts when they're needed. The problem isn't that phase potentiation over applied to an intermediate athlete wastes time. The problem is phase potentiation over applied means you're doing something when you don't have to do it. Here's a perfect example. Someone could say, yeah, man, I need 3 weeks of active rest. And we could ask him geez, that's really insane. You really need 3 weeks to really take it easy? You that beat up? They're like, no, after about 3 or 4 days, I'm good to go for another year. But why the fuck are you doing 3 weeks of active rest? Right? Another one is mini cut, of guys with abs and veins. So think it's time for a mini cut. It's mini cut to where? The show? What the fuck is wrong with you? Just keep gaining. So if you need a mini cut, if you need active rest phase, you use it. The thing is, intermediates just won't need them as frequently. That's the only thing. It's not using them or not using them. It's how frequently do you use them? That's really the only thing. And how long do they go? Like if you planned a 6-week mini cut, but after 3 weeks, you're fucking pretty goddamn shredded. Stop. It's not the thing. It's how much of the thing. It's like, what's the difference between a race car driver and a person who goes to the grocery store in their car? It's not that one has a car and one does not. It is that one uses his car in a very different way for not nearly as long and pushes it not nearly as much to the limit. Both use the car. Same idea. James, anything on that particular thing?
Yeah. So similar to Dr. Mike's answer, just in a slightly different direction. When we generally call someone an intermediate, it's because they have transitioned to a state where they just can't kind of do the same things that they had been doing as a beginner, and that can manifest in a variety of ways. And so in this case, like if you fancy yourself an intermediate, usually that means that phase potentiation structure is more necessary than it was before. Whereas a beginner, you might not need to have like a whole lot of different phasic nature in your training. You can kind of get away with just doing a lot of basic things relatively infrequently and make great gains. So as a beginner, you can lift 3 or 4 times a week and not really do a ton of variation in exercise selections, reps, intensities, and volumes, and you'll make great gains. But what you'll notice as your training age goes up is that you actually need to start varying those things in a logical way. Hence, that's one of the ways in which you become an intermediate, and that you're no longer making gains doing what you were doing before, and your training has to become incrementally more complicated. And this is one of the ways it does.
Yes. So we don't want you to have a level of complexity if it's not indicated, right? It's like someone has like a fucking go-kart, and the fastest they can take it on any of their little fucking trails that they ride around their Montana residence, perhaps, is 40 miles an hour. And someone says like, hey, should I get a go-kart like supercharged with spoilers so you can go 120 miles an hour? It's like, to do what with it? And you're like, well, I guess nothing. It's like, so why the fuck are you doing that, right? But if your go-kart can go 40 miles an hour around curves, but it only goes 20, then yeah, it's a good idea to get the upgrade. So things have to be justifiable. Don't do anything just as a matter of course. And then, okay, so LW continues. As an example, I myself have ran 3 mesocycle massing block using hypertrophy templates and then implemented a 2-week mini cut in order to resensitize a bit in lower body fat. I'm now on the second mass mesocycle after the mini cut. The first mesocycle after the mini cut, I was able to have a way longer accumulation phase than predicted, 8 weeks. I had planned to do a 3 mesocycle mass block, but that would put me at the very upper end of the recommended length for mass. Would I benefit from doing resensitization phase after a mini cut? And mesocycle 2, then proceed massing? Should I wait until mesocycle 3? Here's the thing. How fatigued are you? How fatigued are you? And how beat up are you? And how psychologically fatigued are you? Do you need to resensitize? Resensitization is one of those things like so right now, I'm actually the perfect example for this right now, as I am in always perfect. I am so beat to shit. I'm at the end of I did some half recovery half weeks instead of full deloads. I'm on week number 8 of my massing mesocycle. Right? I don't even know which way is up anymore. I'm modifying my workout severely in order to just careen across the finish line somehow. So if you ask me like, hey, do you need an active rest? I'm like, yes, for the love of fucking God. I wish it was here a week sooner, but due to scheduling concerns, it can't be. So I'm like just praying to God I survived this whole goddamn thing. But if you ask me like, if I was an intermediate or beginner, I'd be like, do you need an active rest phase? I'd be like, what's that? And you describe it, be like, no, I fucking feel golden. I feel 1,000%. If you're hitting PRs, if you're not super psychologically fatigued, if your desire to train is high, just keep fucking going. The only exception is if you have like a bodybuilding show coming up or a meet, and you have to really proactively make sure you're for sure fatigue reduced. Then you take the easy road out and make sure you really cut the slack early to give yourself as much runway as possible. But if you're just like probably for yourself, just trying to get jacked and lean, look, all of these phases are only as indicated by your own physiology and psychology. So if you really feel like you need a fucking active rest phase, nobody can tell you that's not the answer. But if you really assess that you don't need one and you're not bullshitting yourself, fucking active rest phase. James?
I was just imagining your training process as like a race car, and like one of your wheels has fallen off and your muffler's hanging down, like the hood is over the windshield, and you're like, it's still rolling, just finish.
I'm 100 meters away from the finish line, and the guy behind me is 200 meters out. I'm like, go, 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 go.
Yeah. So I totally agree with Dr. Mike here. And I actually am running into a similar situation myself where I've run 3 pretty hard training mesos, and I was planning on taking a break, but I feel really good. And I'm like, there's really like, I'm not flat. I kind of did like my last one was kind of a blend of like 10 to 20 and metabolite stuff. And normally for me, that would be like, yeah, it's about time for a break, but don't need to take a break if you don't feel like you really need to. If you're still getting pumps, still having good training, like still in one piece and your fatigue's in good shape, then just keep going. So, you can always auto-regulate these things. It should be based on a need, not purely pre-planned. Once you are an intermediate, when you're a beginner, you do more pre-planned things just because you don't know enough yet. And sometimes your coach might have, or whoever's helping you might have some insights that you don't. And then once you kind of hit that intermediate stage, you play around with auto-regulation a lot more.
Boom. Beautifully put. James, the next person we will be answering a question for is Jason Marmon, who's kind of like Jason Momoa, but not as cool because of Marmon.
I can't. He looks like he's doing something crazy in his little thumbnail. I can't quite tell.
Sure is doing something. All right. Here we go.
Got it.
Hi, docs. Curious for your take on the fructose and muscle mass preservation when hypocaloric. I presume that using fruits and veggies as primary carb sources in a hypocaloric diet will not yield the same muscle-preserving benefits as carb sources that are more glucose-based, due to fructose being synthesized into primarily liver glycogen instead of muscle tissue. Glucose is not synthesized into muscle tissue, but it is loaded as glycogen. However, if your liver does not have enough loading of glycogen anyway, then that will go there first. Your liver gets priority all the time. So fructose being synthesized primarily for liver glycogen keeps your liver glycogen topped off. And because of that, it will reduce normal daily stuff will reduce your, if you're eating a normal diet, less of the other carbs will go into your muscles. And less of the other carbs will go into liver glycogen because it's already tapped out, and more will go into muscles. Another quick thing is fruits are like a huge fraction, sometimes 50% or more, glucose. So all fruits are glucose fructose combos. They're not pure fructose. So this is not a problem, but let's continue on. In particular, I imagine the liver glycogen helps advance metabolism generally in a huge way, by the way, but specifically would not help at all with maintaining performance. It does that in a huge way by keeping the blood glucose up. It maintains performance to a huge extent. Number one, is this line of reasoning accurate? It is accurate to some degree, but I would say 50% degree, because most of these are glucose fructose combos, which means you just get the best of kind of all worlds. Is 100 cal of liver glycogen equivalent to performance maintenance to 100 cal of stored fat? It's better than the 100 cal of stored fat by long shots, more readily available. It actually keeps your blood sugar up, which fat does not. Fat only keeps your brain going with ketone conversion. And y'all motherfuckers know how that shit feels. It does not feel like blood sugar. I love it. I want a shirt that says powered by ketones that I only wear during my deload week. That's just like, that guy's workout looks like it sucks. Like, yeah, that's what ketones do.
I bet he has bad breath too. Those fucking ketones.
Fuck, dude. Dude, I was training with Charlie during one of his cuts. I was spotting him on bench, and he had like keto breath. And I was like, Charlie, I'm going to die. I'm really sorry. I can't have any. I don't know what's going on here.
It's bad. It's bad.
Yeah. Number two, is it true that fructose is less generally muscle preserving than glucose? I'm aware of no evidence to that effect. How do you think about balancing the usefulness of these filling foods on a hypocaloric diet desired to preserve muscle mass? Loving content takes advance. So here's what I'm saying. If you want to drive as much hypertrophy as possible, insulin-mediated hypertrophy, glycogen loading craziness, on your massing phases, you want to have plenty of glucose and or starch that converts to glucose, and plenty of fructose too, but you don't want to go all fructose. On your fat loss phase, man, fructose is low glycemic, it's slow digesting, builds up liver glycogen. It's really good stuff. And as long as you get some glucose, it's really not a problem. So I would say no one in a million years has lost muscle because they're eating fruit and not grains. Is it possible to eat so much fruit and so few grains that you gain a little bit less muscle on a surplus? Maybe, but then even that strains credulity. So I would say that this is really not a big issue at all. And the fructose thing is no big deal as long as you're not like somehow consuming exclusively fructose, which I don't even know what the fuck you would get. Because people say high fructose corn syrup is only like 50 something percent fructose or some shit like that. Actually, let me not lie to you guys and just Google that. Percent, because these are readily available numbers. Percent fructose in high corn syrup. So 42% or 55% fructose, which means less is fine. The rest is glucose. And that's high fructose corn syrup. A lot of fruits do better than that. So no big deal at all.
Yeah, and I agree, especially when you factor in like the hunger, the satiety effects of eating things like fruit, and the health promoting effects of having, fruits and vegetables. Like, man, I don't know of any compelling arguments that shows that like fructose would have an adverse effect on, muscle maintenance. So factoring all those things in, like it keeps you full, it keeps you healthy. Like it's hard to argue against. hard to argue against having a high, fruits and veg diet. Even during mass, it's like you could, it's probably in your best interest to have a pretty good amount of those, so long as it's not impeding you from eating enough food overall because it makes you so full.
100%. Next up, Ozcar, Ozcar.
Ozcar. That sounds like Ozfest, except it's a rental car service.
Yeah. James, can you click read more? You click the other one.
Oh, whoops.
I always do that. I'm like, gone.
Why is it showing?
All right. First, actually, James, let's read real education. Let's take a look at Athlete Nexus, fix bad posture in 22 days, works every time. I'm just kidding.
God.
Don't click on that.
Look
Isn't that funny that that's like a real
picture.
thing?
Like, all right, now slump your shoulders forward. Now stand up a little bit less straight. Okay, now stand up really
No, James, that was taken one day at a time. Those are real organic pictures. It's not the same photo shoot.
The sun wasn't out on one of those days.
That's right. It was like really great. Like one was taken in London, like in the winter, and the other was taken in Southern California at night. All right. Oscar says, yo, dockies, as someone who is very content with my current leg size, is running a viable option for cardio, considering how effective it is at calorie burning? Oh, it's running. I thought running by him applying. I was like, applying a viable option. Is running a viable option for cardio, considering how effective it is at calorie burning? Will there be any interference effect with upper body workouts other than calorie expenditure? Yeah, if you go really hard running, you can get a lot of just systemic fatigue. But I would say like jogging is a pretty goddamn good cardio with huge fucking calorie burn. So unless you're doing like high intensity interval training, I would say like a moderate pace jog is a fucking great way. If you don't care about leg size and your knees and hips and stuff can tolerate it, ankles, then if you're really just cool with your current leg size, because you continue to train your legs, you probably won't lose any leg size, just won't gain any. I say running is an absolutely great option if it works for you and if you don't notice that the systemic fatigue is too high. No guarantees, but I think it'd go pretty well for you. James?
Yeah, I'm reading a little maybe too deeply into the question, but so, the kind of seems to be two diverging paths here where it says, is running a viable option for cardio? And then it also is kind of hinting at it's really good at calorie burning. So I would say, if you just are looking for something that's good at calorie burning, there's lots of options, and they don't even have to be low intensity cardio like we normally would recommend. There's lots of high energy output cardio options, and running is just, one of them. If you're trying to do running to improve if you're running for cardio, then that's a different kind of discussion. So this is one of those where I would say, I know this might sound nitpicky, but doing a cardiovascular activity for cardio versus doing it for energy expenditure, you might have diverging methods and outcomes, because you can kind of elicit different effects and different goals from those things. So just for example, like you can get a huge energy burning effect from doing all sorts of stuff, like doing rucking or doing the elliptical or, whatever. You can also get really, really good cardio from doing HIIT intervals on a stationary bike. So, it kind of depends on what you are trying to get out of it. If you want to run because you want to get better at running and you want that to be your main source of cardio, I think that's totally fine. I think like Dr. Mike said, you start slow. Like I would say, if you haven't run for a long time, do like a light jog, see how that twice a week, and then just kind of ramp up and see how, where you can get to. Please, for the love of God, don't start with sprinting or HIIT training, stuff like that. But maybe just reconsider, why are you doing the cardio? Are you doing it just for energy expenditure, or are you doing it to increase your cardiovascular capabilities at some activity? Because that might actually guide your choices in different directions.
Boom.
I always feel like we shit on running. Sorry, but it's I think people forget that like running makes you good at running. Like if you want to burn calories, you can do plenty of other things. You don't have to run. Running is an option, but there's lots of other things.
It's such an easily accessible option for most people, and it's been so like canonized in movies and media that like people just equate running. James, remember this? It used to piss us off back in 2010. They started first getting those, I think, Nike ads out, which just said like athletes run. Period. And it's like, not all athletes run, you stupid fucking cunts. Like
shot putters run.
Fuck out of here.
Yeah. I mean, like if you look at like energy expenditure and like oxygen consumption at different activities, it's like, okay, if you want the top ones, it's usually cross-country skiing, some form of running, and strangely enough, boxing. And maybe that's just because they've actually been able to measure that, but that's usually like top three. So it's like there's three great, both cardiovascularly stimulative and high energy output type activities. Turns out they tend to go hand in hand. But
100%. James Bob Wolf, you don't even have to type it in because he's just right below.
Right below
the wall.
Got it.
All right. Bob Wolf says neck hypertrophy, what are the effects to total MRV and any general ways to approach this muscle group, or should you even be isolating in the first place? I often see these muscles overlooked, and in my opinion, they can really make or break a physique in the same way as lacking traps. Thoughts? P.S. I sleep with an AR-15 under my pillow. That is a large, physically sized weapon to have on your
I was going to say, it can't be comfortable.
You better have that trigger lock on pretty tight, otherwise you're fucking shooting people in your sleep. And have 2 psychopathic Doberman. That's good. So
do you live in like northern Idaho?
Where the chance of anyone doing anything is like also 0. So here's the deal, Bob. We're going to look at James Hoffman's screen shared, and we are going to look at the bottom video that has the full caption listed, and it says Jeff Nippert. Jeff Nippert is the world's neck hypertrophy expert, and I would highly recommend his videos. He's figured that shit all out front to back. Let me just answer a couple of your questions real quick and see what James has to say. What are the effects on total MRV? Minor, because neck training is that hard, but it will interfere a little bit with back training, a little bit with shoulder training because it'll be tired. Systemic MRV cost is probably low, but something that, everything added to the soup makes the soup meatier. And any general ways to approach this muscle group, again, that's deferring straight to Jeff Nippert. Or should you even be isolating in the first place? To be honest, man, no one I've seen that's trained their lower body and upper back properly and shoulders has ever really needed neck hypertrophy. There's probably 1 in 100 people will need that. Like James's neck, James is all nattied out over there. Like his neck looks like a fine neck. It looks like a perfectly concords with his traps and shoulders. I wouldn't look at James and be like, fucking pencil neck loser. Like, he's never done a neck session in his life.
Shrunk down over the years, which is good because it was really big for a while.
For sure. Wrestler neck, rugby neck, like,
yes.
It's also like, if you get big enough, your neck starts to actually give you sleep apnea. That's another thing. Like my neck's fucking enormous, but I've never done a single neck thing in my entire life. Probably never will. Now, clearly, in an alternate universe, I've hit the sauce a little bit. So that definitely helps. But look, like even most natty folks, their neck is really well sized to everything else. Another thing is like, if you have a really, really big neck, sometimes it kind of detracts away from your shoulder width. So if you have a pencil neck and you've tried everything else, you've already do high quality shoulder training with full ROM and everything like that, upper back stuff, then yeah, you can consider neck stuff. And that's for Jeff Nippert to sort you out on. That's probably our best answer there.
Yeah, I think that was really good. Like Mike said, I've never really known anyone personally who does good training. And then you're like, man, you really need to start working on that neck. You look terrible. It's just almost never happens. I do think there is a place for neck training in some select sport applications, like grappling sports, arguably things like rugby and football. There may be a case for that. But for physique, man, I don't know. I don't feel like I said, I've never really seen the need. I think sometimes, and I'm not saying this is you, Bob, here, but I think sometimes people think that like if they're that their upper body, like their delts and the top of their chest and stuff is kind of not looking as good as they want. They're like, oh, maybe I'll work on my neck and it'll make it look better. It's like, no, you just need to do more bench and more lateral raises and then it will come along over time. That's just me being like, cynical and being kind of a dickhead. But honestly, I think that's like 95% of the time when people think about neck training, it's like, no, just do more of the other training and it will come along. And honestly, having a big neck's a pain in the ass. Like I was saying, mine has shrunk down over the years. I used to have like a 22. And so like buying shirts and stuff was just fucking awful. And I also have long arms. So it's like finding like a dress shirt was always just a nightmare. And I'm glad it finally came back down to a more reasonable size. Cause for a while it was like huge and it was just a pain in the ass.
100%. James, don't you scroll anywhere or type anything? Because Sai Chilukuri is our next question asker.
Oh, you nailed that one. I was like, what the?
I didn't. I actually had to scroll forward in my own list because my shit is different. But luckily, I was like, I remember that question. Oh, he's like number 7 on our list. So perfect. Just
what kind of name do you think that is? I have no clue.
I would say my best guess is somewhere in the India, Bangladesh, Pakistan. No, India, Bangladesh, Myanmar region. That would be my best guess.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
The Uris, they tend to be from that general region of the world. I probably fucked that all to hell. It's probably
I have no clue. That's what I was wondering. I would have. There's an anime character on Naruto named Sai, so I would be like Japanese.
Yeah, Japanese. First name definitely seems Japanese. The last name not Japanese, but maybe it is. Who knows?
Yeah. Okay.
All right. What are your thoughts on RPE, rating of perceived exertion, versus percentage-based programming for strength? What about hypertrophy training? So I think James and I are probably going to share the same kind of opinion here, but that's just a prediction. I think percentages get you into the general area, and then RPEs take care of the rest. So James, is that
Yeah, so it's like using a combination of both subjective and objective measures. The percentages are like kind of your more hard evidence-based, like here's what I did, here's what it should be kind of mathematically, in terms of like either your efforts or your weights or your whatever you're doing. And then you use kind of RP or more subjective measures like RIR, things like that, to kind of help just fine tune those and auto regulate them into the correct place. So kind of like I think of the percentage based or is more of like pre-planning, and then RPE and things like that is kind of like auto regulation. So why not both? But I think some of these are maybe a little bit better suited for strength training versus hypertrophy. For example, you can RPE all you want for strength, but at some point, if you don't move the needle forward in terms of weight on the bar, you won't get any stronger. So that's kind of even though using RPE for strength is good, at some point you actually do have to use numbers to actually guide that process. Hypertrophy is kind of similar, but in a different way. Whereas like, as long as you are training within a reasonable amount of like whatever your pre-programmed range of strength scores. And for our purposes, we say anything between 5 and 30 reps. And that's basically a proxy for intensity. So anything in there and within, 4 to 0 RIR, you're pretty good. Like you're good to go. And you can use that RIR scoring as your subjective measure. And then you have a really wide range of objective scores of repetitions to play around in. So you can use both in different ways.
Boom. Perfect. All right. Next up is Vasil Zhelev, VASIL.
Got it. He's got the RP logo going.
So Jared Feather just walked in, and I was like, man, I'm so glad to be peeking out with this mass. I'm finishing up this mass, and I just finished my huge container of the mass gainer, super mass gainer, serious mass from Opto Nutrition. Jared just walks in. He went to the store, and he like shows me this giant thing of serious mass. I'm like, what the fuck? He's a show CrossFit. That's not for him. Is that for me? Why? God damn it! Are you out of your fucking mind? I'm here for 4 more days. I'm not taking that with me.
8 more days.
I'm leaving in. I hate this fucking ass. I was like thinking I never had to hit that shit again. And he just brings it in. All right.
And folks, congratulations to Jarrett Feather. I think he placed 5th in his first pro show.
5th in his first pro show.
I was surprised. I was like, man, because I saw Jared's like kind of the pics he had been posting on Instagram leading up. I was like, damn, who beat Jared? And then I saw the top 3. I was like, oh, that guy's huge. Oh my God.
Yeah, for sure. There's like upper backs are really big. And yeah, so, but he's well on his way.
Yeah, no, congrats to him.
All right. So Vasil asks, what it do, docs? That's a great way to start a question. Sorry for the long question, but this has been bothering me for some time now. I could just see Vasil in the shower, like,
just rooting. MRV.
Pulls up to a Taco Bell, starts to order food. They're like, can you confirm your order? He's like, never mind, drives off, goes 90 down a straightaway, like, argh.
Mike, have you ever read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance?
I haven't, but I've heard really good things about it.
So I've read it, and the main character basically goes through this existential crisis, and then it causes him to go into psychosis. Sorry, spoiler alert. I was just imagining Vasil having the same, he's thinking about MRV, and it causes him to have like a psychotic breakdown.
Holy fuck.
Sorry, tangent.
Oh, hold on. Jared's showing me things.
Points.
Oh, you have points.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
You had a point?
I got 2.
You got 2 points for your show. That's awesome.
Like
Can you trade them for money?
Sweet.
He got points to qualify for the Olympia, so hopefully he can get some more and qualify.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah,
is he gonna try and knock out another one while he's in good shape here? Or is he?
Yep, correct. He's probably going to do the show in Mexico, Tijuana. Now I've been to Tijuana a few times. It's never for bodybuilding show. Well, it's a show of some kind. Just going to shut up.
Oh God, Tijuana. All right.
It's like a bodybuilding show with humans and animals at the same time.
Well, good luck. I hope he stays. Don't get Montezuma's revenge. I've had that.
Or like kidnapped by the cartels.
Yeah.
I would also say that what I saw at Tijuana was, definitely physiques were seen, not as lean and different posing Very different posing. So
Different posing.
it's a donkey show, James. It's where the woman has sex with a donkey. On a
Oh.
donkey show.
God damn it. I was like, those poses are standard. What are you talking about?
Like you go to a donkey show with your friends and the woman comes out and just hit like a front lat spread. You're like, this is actually better than I thought it was going to be. The donkey's hitting like
Very
side
nice.
glute. You're like, that donkey's shredded as fuck. Dude, that's what we need is animal bodybuilding. Do you think that would be ethical? Like get your bulldogs.
Dude, fucking kangaroos would take it. Those fucking big reds. Jesus.
For sure. Although I don't know, a Clydesdale horse in fucking peak condition. Good God.
Horses are so muscular, but like they're so wussy. They like anything happens to them and they die. It's like your like horse maintenance checklist is like, is it like hooves and teeth okay? Is it stomach okay? Put it down. Just shoot it. It's there's not. They just die so easily. Because Mel's like into the equine stuff now, and it's like the horses will just like see a puddle, panic, like fall down, and they're just dead. You just have to kill them at that point.
Fuck.
They're these massive, beautiful, and like veiny, muscular. They weigh like 1,000 pounds or more, sometimes. And it's like, you're so big and sturdy, but so fragile at the same time. Yeah. I used to look at horses and be like, God, look at how buff that thing is. Now I'm like, that thing's going to die. It's going to see a tree stump and panic and die.
Yeah. I think like once they break their legs, they're kind of SOL, right?
I mean, if they like lay on their stomachs for too long, they're SOL. They just die really easily. I don't know. I'm a horse rant here, but yeah. Yeah.
All right. Vasil says, I'm asking this because, wait, hold on. I think we need to scroll up.
Sorry.
Yes. Do major muscle groups which have a higher MRV also have a higher MEV and MV? Usually, yes. I'm asking this because only in week 1 of Meso 1 and 2 out of 3 total, when I was when my lats got mildly sore and then they were just kind of stiff after workouts. I had a volume based on the repetitions from previous weeks to meet target RR and also on the degree of soreness, which is non-existent almost. Usual progression for week 1 to 4 goes like this. Meso 1, 12, 14, 17, 21. Meso 2, 14 to 22. Meso 3, 15 to 21. Although I significantly improved training quality, exercise selection, my muscle connection, and rarely step below 7 reps at a given exercise, I still can't reliably fuck my lats up like I can chest, quads, or rhomboids. And lastly, when I hit MRV on lats, it's more of a gassing out type of failure, except on pullovers, meaning they're not really ready to rupture from otherworldly stimulus when they fail, right? Just can't complete the movement anymore. Send me to the higher initial volume question and bigger volume jumps week to week. Is this potentially the answer, or have I skipped over qualitative solutions rather than quantitative? Yes, even though I bought VersaGrips a while ago and overall SFR is better because of the meticulously handpick exercise. Very good. So here's the thing about lats. Fundamentally, the way that your lats insert or originate and insert into your body, you cannot put them under the kind of insane stretch that you can other muscles. Let me give you a list of muscles you can put under unreal stretch. Glutes, in some situations, you got to get kind of creative. Hamstrings are the key muscle you can do that with. Triceps, calves, chest, and quads. Have you ever had trouble getting those sore? Because if you have, just training them properly and getting a real gnarly stretch, you'll fix all those problems. Here are muscles that have trouble getting stretched under tension. Biceps, all the shoulder muscles, traps, lats, much of the back musculature. Probably you've had trouble getting those muscles sore. That's probably the reason. Stretch under tension under stretch is a really great stimulus for hypertrophy, and it also causes a fuckload of soreness. So I wouldn't worry about your lats not getting sore. I would just get a real good pump, real good stimulus, and then scale up the volume as needed from there. Lats just don't get really super sore consistently. If you could detach them from your humerus and then a humeri, and you could independently train them with a crazy cycle range of motion, they would get super fucking sore, and they probably would grow more too, but just do your best. So this is why for James and I, it especially is upsetting when people cut the range of motion on rowing and pulling vertically, because it's like your lats already mechanically don't go through a range of motion. Now you're like doing even less. The fuck is wrong with you? So that's my answer, James.
Yeah, very good. So just back to the first one, the volume landmarks for muscle groups tend to kind of flow together. Not always, but like if you see shifts moving up, you'll start to see general trends of the other ones moving up. So if you find like your MRV's been going up, your MEV is probably coming up, maybe not as aggressively. Likewise, MV might be marginally moving up. So those are just general shifts. And when you take time off, right? You see the reverse happen after, if you take like a resensitization phase or a deload, you'll see they shift back to I'd say to the left, which means like less sets needed to get the result. So that is common. One thing with lats, share your pain. I think most people share your pain on this, especially somebody who has mechanically unfavorable. I got those Gumby arms. So training lats for me is usually very challenging. One thing that I've been experimenting with, because my lats almost never get sore. You know what gets my lats sore is fucking stiff-legged deadlifts. That's the only thing that generally will get my lats sore. Great, super helpful. But one thing I've been playing around with lately on this last meso, which I had some limited success, more success than I've ever had, was doing a lot more pre-fatigue on the lats. So I've been doing things like cable, straight arm, lats before I do pull downs and stuff like that. And I've been doing, I am fortunate that my setup, I can do a fully stretched weight touch the stack pause. So I've been doing the pre-fatigue cable lats, and then I'll do a full pause, top stretch, and then pull down to like nipples, chest on my pull downs. And then that actually has caused my lats to get sore these last meso or two. So give that a try, play around with that, see if that helps.
Oh, great answer. All right, Will Murray is up next.
Sure it's not Bill Murray?
Pretty close. William, a.k.a. Bill Murray. I mean,
Got him.
They probably have the same formal first name.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Will Murray says, "Hi, docs. When coming back from a layoff and having lost quite a bit of muscle, do you think it's best to bulk or maintain to regain the lost muscle? Thanks. I think it's best to maintain, because muscle loss, when it occurs, gaining it back is very easy. Thus, you don't need the power of hypercaloric eating. When you're coming back from a layoff, you don't want to get super fat. And if you start gaining right after a layoff, you can get pretty fat. So just like when we say when new people start training, we usually have them just go to maintenance for a while and gain muscle and lose fat at the same time. Pretty much the same advice for folks that have come back from a layoff. After that, you'll be pretty lean and pretty jacked, and you could do like a little mini cut or even just start gaining, and then it'll be kind of the best of all worlds. When muscle retention or sort of muscle regaining is so easy, you don't have to use and you don't have to sort of fatigue your best weapons, hypercaloric diet, in order to do so. You don't have to get all the other, all the other sort of negative side effects, like feeling like shit and eating so much food and blah, blah, blah. So there you go.
Yeah, I totally agree. And in sport training, we would we would call this a return to fitness type phase, where you're coming off of either inactivity or an injury or both. And you're really not treating it like a mass or a cut phase. You're really treating it as what we call return to fitness, meaning you're just building back up your tolerance to training stimulus. So you start low and you ramp up, notably week to week until, maybe a month or two goes by and you're getting pretty close to what you were doing before, which is great. But that whole time, you're regaining ability, tolerance, and very likely going to be gaining some muscle mass back along the way. So there's really no incentive to cut or mass unless you just want to make your life unnecessarily difficult or just get fatter than necessary. So I think Dr. Mike's suggestion on maintenance is the way to go.
Boom. All right. The next person up is Jason Predick.
Jason. Oh. Jason Marmon, Jason Predick. Got it.
There he is. All right. Do you recommend including regular deadlifts for hypertrophy? Yes, as long as their stimulus to fatigue ratio is good for you, or you really can't gain muscle in the spinal erectors, traps, and rhomboids, and you need something with crazy raw stimulus magnitude. So if you're including deadlifts in your training, and I ask you a question like, hey, do deadlifts really beat you up so much that it really hurts the rest of your training? You're like, no, they're great, fit right into my program. Deadlifts are excellent for hypertrophy training. If I ask you the question of like, hey, listen, why are you doing deadlifts? And you say, look, they fuck me up. They fatigue me like shit. They really interfere with other muscle group training, but they're so effective to build up my spinal erectors, rhomboids, and traps that if I don't do them, I just don't get the kind of back growth that I want. Then it's a good idea to do deadlifts. Neither one of those things apply, then it's probably not a good idea to do deadlifts. For example, if I say to you, hey, like, are you really trying to bring up your back? Do bent rows not work? You're like, actually, bent rows and stuff work really, really well for me. Stiff-legged deadlifts in addition to bent rows with some good mornings, grow my back a ton. And then I'm like, I see you doing deadlifts. And you're like, well, yeah, got to keep in the big three, right, brother? I'm like, no, you don't. Well, let me ask you another question. How fatiguing are deadlifts? You're like, dude, they really fuck me up. I wish I didn't have to do them. I'm like, good news, you don't have to do them, because you seem to have no problem getting a huge stimulus for your back from other exercises. To me, that's how the cookie crumbles. James, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. And what we see more often than not is kind of that late intermediate stage lifter who has been using deadlifts traditionally at some point starts to make a switch to things like stiff-legged deadlifts and like good morning variations, just because the cost of doing, and in this case, as Dr. Mike described it, like the fatigue that you get from doing it just doesn't outweigh outweighs the benefit that you gain from them. They just become so either locally and or systemically fatiguing that it just inhibits your ability to do a lot of other things. And so to accommodate that, a lot of people will start switching to things like stiff-legged deadlifts, good mornings, which still hit a lot of that same muscle groups, but really can hit the hams and the glutes a little bit more just directly than kind of the all-around activity of the deadlift. So I think it's a great one for beginners. It's still useful for people who are kind of in that early intermediate stage. And then typically, I know this is like splitting hairs here, but that late intermediate stage, it's not so much that it's not useful. It's just that the cost has skyrocketed and the benefit has just trickled down as a result of their training age. So at that point, it's better to find something else that serves a more specific purpose. And in this case, we usually say, why don't you pick a posterior chain movement that really just nails the posterior chain rather than kind of hitting everything at the same time?
100%. Next up is Apex K.
Got it.
All right. So he asks, best way to fix bad movement patterns. I have a tendency for the barbell to shift to the left from over tucking my right arm on the bench. So I actually have just recorded, and it'll be out. It'll probably be out in like 3 or 4 months because we're really out of schedule all the time at RP or the RP studio. It's an entire video dedicated to how to do this and whether or not it's even a good idea. But a quick preview is the best weapon you have is twofold. One, find out if this is at all relevant, because sometimes everyone's body's built a little different. Everyone has asymmetries. It might just be like nothing is different and your muscles all look kind of pretty similar, and just some weird stuff happens when you lift and it's not hurting you. No clicking, no popping, and then you might not have to fix shit. Because that tucking could be making up for something else in the chain that's different. So, for example, your radius and ulna bones could be slightly differently long on one arm versus the other, and then your humeral length can be also slightly different, but in the opposite direction, making your arms just as long as one another. But because there's a ratio difference, in order for the mechanics of the bench press coming down and up to work without blowing your elbows out, one has to tuck more than the other. If you think about it, you're like, oh, that probably wouldn't look different coming down. So it wouldn't look the same coming down. They look different. If you try to fix that, you're actually fixing the fix, and then you have a problem, right? It's kind of like saying if you have really huge rims on your car that you bought, and then you have to make bigger tires so the rims don't scratch the road. If you try to fix the big tire problem, the rims start scratching the road. It gets one of those is the fix for the other, and your body makes auto fixes like that all the time. So just make sure that there's no real problem to fix there. And that's point number one. Point number two is the best way to fix something is to reduce the proximity to failure, reduce the overall load you're using, and actively practice good technique while using other exercises that hit the muscle group where you don't have to fix them. So you basically turn the exercise maybe at the end of a session, so a couple times a week. You do the exercise very, very far from failure, very light load, and you relearn the movement patterns to do properly. Then once that movement pattern is really set in, you slowly increase the proximity to failure, you slowly add weight to the bar, and eventually you really stay like a hawk on making sure that those movement patterns, the bad ones, don't return. And then after a while, you've reintegrated. Now your new movement pattern is your new movement pattern. You're probably going to have to keep an eye on it for at least a few months, even when that happens, to make sure it doesn't revert back. But that's a pretty good start as far as an answer is concerned. James?
Really good. I just want to point this out on my screen. Sky News Australia, the leader of the free world is cognitively delinquent.
Delinquent is a funny way to put it because it's like if he doesn't care. Like,
yeah,
I think he's disabled, not delinquent.
I think he's just senile. All right. Yeah. So I agree with Dr. Mike. I think that point number two that he made, I say honestly that, and this is my opinion, but that corrects like 97% of all problems. And the thing that I think most people struggle with is they're like, well, my technique's fine, but when I do 135 pounds on bench, I get my, elbows tucked. Well, take it down to 95. Like that's going to fix it. Like people are just reluctant to take the weight down. And I know that's such a basic thing and it just pulls at your ego heartstrings, but that's the way to do it. Take the weight down until you can do it the way that you want. Whatever you think is a perfect repetition or what it should be, take it to a weight that you can do all perfect repetitions. And when you start like schmigging around too much, you're always going to default to kind of what you know, right? And if what you know is this bad technique, anytime the going gets tough, you're going to default back to that, right? So the idea being, this is going to be like reprogramming your motor learning, which takes a long time. So in this case, take the weight down, focus on like your mind muscle connection. So you're adjusting the new technique that has more sound biomechanics, also so that it's still training the muscles that you want. So what a lot of people will do, and sorry, I'm ranting a little bit, but a lot of people will be like, okay, well, now I'm going to fix my bench technique, but now I don't feel it in my pecs anymore. Okay, well, then it's not serving the purpose that it's meant to serve. So now you got to readjust again. Now I got to find out, how can I do it so it's still feeling it in my pecs, but I'm not doing the thing that I didn't want to do. Now I got to take the weight down, focus on mind muscle connection, focus on good mechanics, and go from there. There's really no other way to do it. That's kind of the key point here. Is I'm telling you, whenever somebody's like, how do I fix like my knee valgus? Take the weight down when you're squatting until your knees don't valgus anymore. And just keep doing that. Like there's no other way. What if I do banded glute, side raise? It's like, yeah, okay, but you're still going to have the same problem. Like just take the weight down.
Yep, 100%. Last up in the stack is Tomer, Tomer. There's 2 questions. We want the first. There it is.
Got a Naruto avatar.
Lame.
Oh,
I'm going to get a lot of shit for that. All right.
I love Naruto.
In terms of strength, is more volume / sets in the 5 to 10 / 3 to 5 reps equals more strength gains? If not, then why not just do 1 to 2 sets of compound in 5 to 7 range and then do back off sets in 8 to 12 or even higher with certain exercise, because it might be less fatiguing and perhaps less injury risks. Yeah. So there's a certain amount of volume that you can do in the heavy loading regions, like the 3 to 6 rep regions, which increases your strength the most effectively. And as long as you fill up that volume, you're getting strength as effectively as possible. If you do a lot of other work in any other rep ranges, like even the 5 to 10, definitely the 8 to 12, you're getting a bit more of a hypertrophy stimulus, but less of a strength stimulus because you could have been doing more strength work. So yes, multiple sets in the 3 to 6 rep range is probably the best way to get strength, at least in the short, medium term. And long term, of course, you need to come back and put on some muscle and get that muscle stronger. But generally speaking, that's really the deal, which is why you see a lot of powerlifting programs by really good athletes have multiple sets of 3 to 6 reps in some paradigm or another. And there's just no getting around that. Like if you've done 1 set of 3 to 6, and you said, I want to continue to get strong as possible, not just big. Your question is next, should you do a set of 8 to 12 or should your next set be another set of 3 to 6? Man, another set of 3 to 6 is probably that correct answer until you reach pretty close to your MRV. And when you want to prioritize away from strength and towards hypertrophy, which James and I would say should probably be another phase, then you do most of your work in the 5 to 10, 8 to 12 range, and you would split it up like that.
Yeah, and this is just like one of those instances of diverging goals and specificity. Like, can you get a hypertrophy stimulus from doing sets of 3 to 5? Yeah, sure. It's just outside of kind of our optimal bell curve, which we have identified as somewhere between 5 and 30 reps for hypertrophy as a specific goal. However, 3 to 5 reps is like the apex of the strength curve, right? In terms of like long-term sustainability and, injury risk, things like that. So it's just 2 diverging things at that point. And it seems nitpicky. It's like, well, what's the difference between, 2 reps? You say 3 is too heavy, but 5 is hypertrophy. There's definitely some overlap. Some, they're not totally mutually exclusive, but there do have to be some reasonable cutoff points that we can quantify. And so far, that's what we have identified kind of in the literature and through experiences. Somewhere between 5 and 30 is generally hypertrophy. Are you going to get a little bit of strength? Sure. It's just not the best strength stimulus. Somewhere between 1 and 5 is strength. Are you going to get some hypertrophy? Yeah, just not as good as if you did the hypertrophy range. But so they do overlap quite a bit. And as Mike said, at that point, you just want to if you're looking for both, take a phasic approach. That's the best way to do it.
Boom. By the way, not a question, but we'll answer it anyway. Timothy Navaratil says right below Tomer, damn, I missed it live. And the thing is, we don't do live. So you didn't miss anything. Good news.
Yeah. I mean, half the time we just text each other and we're like, okay, we're doing it today? Yeah, let's do it. All right, let's go. So it's not like a schedule that you missed or anything. So don't worry about that. All right. Was that it or is there any more?
That's it. That's 10.
Okay. Well, that was pretty good. We got some good questions today. Dr. Mike, any housekeeping, any RP stuff people need to know about?
Yeah, I'm doing a collaboration with good old coach Greg Doucette. And we recorded a bunch of content, and he's slowly releasing all that. So go on his channel and like and comment on that shit, and then talk some shit over there and bring up some of his users back here. So that's it. That's always more stuff in the works, always more great YouTube content, and yeah.
All right. I got my fingers in a couple RP pies, though. I'm not sure how much I'm supposed to talk about those. So we'll just
don't talk about them.
There we go. So there, you heard it from the man himself. Don't talk about them. So
also, James, please don't put your fingers into pies. That's disgusting.
I can do it American pie style. Put something else in there.
Ooh.
My dick.
Or put your fingers into a metaphorical pie, so to speak. A little slice down there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that's it, guys. Thanks for joining us for this week. If you are enjoying our banter and nonsense, go ahead and subscribe. There's all sorts of, I can't even believe how many goddamn videos are on this YouTube channel. Every time I try to look for the most recent Q&A, I'm like, what is all this shit? What is Mike even talking about at this point? What is wrong with this guy?
No.
He just puts out so many videos. So if you guys are into exercise, nutritional science, bodybuilding, periodization, sports, we got you covered. So make sure you subscribe and keep an eye out for new videos every week. In the meantime, we'll see you next week.